It's time now for the world famous Butch and Bob Show. Got a special guest in the studios with us, County Administrator Paul Drawdy. Paul, always good to see you. Appreciate you coming in and being on today's show.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks for the invite.
I got a main topic I want to talk about, but we'll talk about some other things. Last night, CPA Campbell Osteen gave the audit report. You mentioned that if people want to see the audit, there's a way to do that. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, they can do it two ways. One, they can come up to the office and request a copy, and we'll be more than happy to get them one because it is, 40, 50-page document. But the other way is probably a simpler, I'm going to say it's simpler. It's going to eventually be simpler. There's a University of Georgia, and it's TED something, but it's a site that UGA runs, and by Georgia law, all counties and municipalities are supposed to post their audit on that site, which we do. But it's kind of hard to find sometimes. So what we're going to do today sometime, Amanda's going to create a link and put it on our website. So you can go to our webpage, click the link, and find it there.
Right,
and it'll have this was 23s, obviously, because we're on a calendar year budget. And so this was 23's audit. They finished it up in June, but it has to go to the state. And they typically don't give the audit report until the state gives their thumbs up saying, yeah, everything looks good.
Overall, pretty good report. They were pleased with it. And like I said, I thought Campbell Osteen did a good job from Harrison Company. So
and he's great to work with. Him and Kel both. They were in the office, for probably about 3 months, going through things. And I think there was no material findings whatsoever. There was just, I think, 2 considerations, or it might have been 3. But one of them was that we expect it every year, and the state does too, for counties our size, is a segregation of duties. Because, the only way we can get around that type of, like I said, it's not a material finding, but that type of finding is we have to hire a lot more people, because it's not just in our office at the administrative office, but you're talking about, the clerk's office that receives money, and the, state court, superior court, that type of thing.
What was interesting to me, like I said, they normally get it earlier, but as he said, the state, they're like everybody else having trouble finding people to work. They're short-staffed. So it took them 2 months to get it approved by the state.
Yeah, the Department of Revenue. And that's what I don't know if it was just this year or what, but I know I was talking to an individual who's that knows a lot about the Department of Revenue, and they were saying that they had a lot of retirees that were kind of getting to their end of their service, and so they were kind of jumping ship and going over to some of these private contractors, and so they were short of staff this year for sure.
Again, if you're just joining us in the studios with us, is County Administrator Paul Drawdy. The reason I brought you in here, we've been covering this story. It's starting to gain some traction. Again, there's been some issues with the district attorney. He currently sued Glenn County Commissioners last Monday, filed a lawsuit saying, alleging that they're failure to do their job and to fund his office, but he owes them close to $1 million. There's been talk that Wayne County would like to get out of the circuit altogether, join with Apple and Jeff Davis, possibly another county. Again, this isn't just talk anymore. The chairman, Mike Gordon, last night said there was a meeting between he and the Glenn and Camden commissioners, and there's a lot of counties just not real happy with what's going on. But had Attorney General Chris Carr in Monday here in town, and people asked him about that, but he said it's pretty much a local issue, that they have that oversight committee that will be looking over at district attorneys across the state, but that only takes effect in January. So until then, the counties like us and everybody else has this, we've seen things that haven't happened ever in the circuit. We've never had a district attorney bail on the juvenile court system in each county in the circuit, and there's 5 counties in the circuit. Wayne, Appleton, Jeff Davis, Camden, and Glenn had to form a way to fund their own juvenile court system. He's pulled all the assistant DAs down to the Glenn County office, so there's no assistant DA here in Wayne County, which is making it tough for attorneys and law enforcement, things like that. But talk about how this topic of possibly moving out of the circuit, became reality, and what all needs to take place to make it a reality. I know it has to be done statewide, but I understand you've been in contact with some of our state legislators, and they seem to think if it can come to fruition, they'd be glad to push it through the legislature. Is that correct?
Well, I want to be perfectly open and honest here and say that in my talks with, maybe I should even back up further. So Stephen Meeks called me early on when some of this stuff was going on, one, to get some insight of, hey, what is this issue with the DA's office? And then since that time, he stayed in contact with us, just saying, hey, what do y'all need or whatever. And so one of the things I'd asked Stephen early on was I had heard possibly back in 2013 or just several years ago that the legislature had looked at the issue of splitting the Brunswick Judicial Circuit. So I was thinking there was a report out there, and Stephen tried to find it for me in Atlanta, and we were unable to find that. But in the meantime, also what Stephen has done is got some information together of, okay, if y'all are going to pursue this is kind of how it goes. And obviously, and just for the listeners, a reminder that the Brunswick Judicial Circuit is Glenn, Camden, Wayne, Appleton, and Jeff Davis. So if we were going to try to split the circuit, which has been done before, just here recently, I think the Augusta Circuit split, and a lot of those, the circuit there, I think the issue was, to my knowledge, it just got so large population-wise. We're close to that now with the amount of folks that are in Camden and Glenn as big as they're growing. I don't know that, honestly, that if we're close enough that the legislature would look at it and go, oh, yeah, you meet the criteria, we want to pull the trigger on this. But because of these other circumstances going on, it kind of makes it, I'm not going to say a no-brainer, but it sure would be nice, I think, for at least Appleton, Jeff Davis, and Wayne. And I'll tell you why I say that. Well, once again, let me back up and say, when we looked at it, there's two options that kind of stood out, which was, one, fix the issue with the district attorney. Just watching the interaction between Glenn County and the district attorney, I'm not sure how that's, well, we've got a way forward, I think, that we can make it happen. But it seems like if it is, he'll be brought on kicking and screaming, I think. So with that in mind, there was another option that got floated. Commissioner Hickox brought it up in reference to actually splitting the district because, as she said in the meeting and talking to some of the legislatures, that that it has been done in Georgia before on a couple of occasions or a few occasions. So the ideal would be that one, Wayne, Appleton, and Jeff Davis would all have to agree, yes, we want to do this. We want to pursue splitting a district. Now, that would be a very small district, so we would want to look at another county and try to bring them in, so we would have a fourth county circuit, and then Brunswick Judicial Circuit would just stay Brunswick and, or Glenn and Camden. And they have the population to have a circuit by themselves. For me personally, and this is just my personal opinion, yes, it's a way out of the current situation, but now it's more of a long view from the standpoint it could be 2 or 3 years if everything fell in place and we were able to move this along. It could probably be at least 3 years before we saw something like this happen. I think it's worth pursuing from the standpoint of, personally, I've always, I shouldn't say always, probably in the last at least 10 years, we notice more than more that in our judicial elections, whether it be Superior Court judges or district attorneys, if you carry Glenn County, you win, plain and simple. That's fine for right now, but what about 20 years from now? What about 30 years from now? Because for someone who, I was born and raised in Jesup. When I got out of the Marine Corps, I went to work with Glenn County PD. So I've worked in Glenn County. I've owned businesses in Glenn County, and I absolutely love Glenn County. However, what you see, because they are more of a retirement type community, a lot of folks from the outside come and live there. Over the years, I've watched their demographics change. So I don't know that I would say it's that way now, but definitely in the future, the more and more it changes, it's not going to be, and well, really it's not now, I guess, that rural county that Wayne, Appleton, and Jeff Davis are. So do we want to be aligned in a circuit with more like-minded folks where we know that the judges were elected and the district attorneys were elected, kind of think more like us, come from our demographics of that rural county? Because obviously Glenn and Camden's needs are a lot different than ours.
Yes, we have a famous saying here on the Butch and Bob Show, it's always about the money. And that's what it comes down to. It comes down to money. But according to Mike Gordon, the DA is in charge of all the money. But explain how the DA's office is funded, because, as you mentioned, it's a 5-county circuit, and all 5 counties give money to the DA's office. And then he has to use that money to hire assistant DAs and things like that. But that seems to be the issue, what he's paying his assistant DAs, talking to other former people who were assistant DAs, the salaries that he's paying are way more than has been paid in years past. No telling what he's paying himself, because if he's paying those assistant DAs 6 figures, there's no telling what he's paying himself. But explain how the counties fund the DA's office, and that seems to be the issue, that he's run out of money. And like I said, he owes the commissioners of Glenn County close to $1 million, and they want that money back. So that's how all this began, how this all came to light. So first of all, explain how the 5 counties help fund the DA's office and how the money is distributed.
And that's a good question, Bob, because here's, and it's good for the listeners too, I think, because probably the number one question, especially when this started off, from citizens and even other people in government, the biggest question they get is, how do you get $1 million in debt? How do you get in debt, period, to the governing authority, the commissioners of a county? And so, in looking at this, I just, through the years, I've always assumed that
and you used
all
to
the
work
other
at the DA's office, right?
Yeah.
So you're familiar with the
right.
DA.
And so it really helps. I think in this whole, with all 5 counties, Wayne County has been able to kind of, I don't want to say take lead in this, but we've been able to offer a lot of good insight, because once again, our county attorney, Andy Beaver, he used to work with the DA office as well as a prosecutor. So both of us having that inside knowledge of kind of how a DA's office works has helped us kind of navigate this whole issue. So one of the things we found is that probably, and this is just rough estimates, but probably about 75% of the circuits in the state of Georgia fund it different than us. There's about 20 to 25% of the circuits that fund it the way we do. And here's the issue. It's never been a problem until now. So the way it works is, sometime years ago, more than likely based on population, because you have to understand a DA's office is truly a circuit office. So those individuals that work at the DA's office, even though you may be at the Wayne County office, it's not uncommon for them to have a big case in Glenn County, or maybe have a case in Jeff Davis, and they would call on, which I was an investigator at the time, they would call on me to come help on an investigation there because they just needed more manpower. Same thing with prosecuting cases. You may have an attorney in the Camden office who is, their niche might be sex crimes. And so if you've got a big rape case or child molesting case or something like that, you could pull that attorney from Camden, send them to a Jeff Davis or a Wayne, and have them, if not prosecute, help prosecute that case. So it's truly a circuit-type office. So the way they set it up was each county set a budget for the DA based on population, and then that money was given to the district attorney. It was sent to his office. Now, with 5 counties, one of those counties had to be a payroll processor, or it was simpler that way. And so Glenn County, being the largest county, they chose to be the payroll processor way back in the past. And so what would happen is all 5 counties would send their budget to the district attorney's office, and then Glenn County would invoice the district attorney and say, okay, we've paid for all of your employees all across all 5 counties, and on paper they're listed as a Glenn County employee. So they've cut them checks for this pay period, and here's how much you owe us back. So for Glenn County specifically, they would give, and I can't remember their exact numbers, but they may give $160,000 that month, and then the DA would turn around and give back like $102,000 that would cover all the payroll for the entire circuit. So what happened was, our understanding is that sometime, it was around September, October of 23, his office missed a payment. So I think an email was sent to him or whatever, or sent to his office. and said, hey, you missed your monthly payment. They ended up catching that up sometime by the end of the year, and then sometime around end of January, 1st of February, they just quit making all payments. So what was happening is all 5 counties were still sending their monthly budget because, for instance, is Wayne County, our annual budget for the DA's office is, for the last couple of years, has been $254,000. Well, that equates to a little over $21,000 a month. So every month we would send him our $21,000. Appleton would send however much they sent. Same thing with all the other counties. They sent it to the DA's office. So he was getting the money, but then not reimbursing Glenn County when Glenn County was paying the employees. So that's how he got into debt with Glenn County.
All right. So this recent commissioners had a recent meeting, and Glenn County's done the same. When there's something question about money, everybody wants an audit. So Glenn County's requested an audit. Wayne County's requested an audit. So far, nothing's transpired as far as that goes, right? That's still a dead issue.
Well, so
there's been no cooperation from the DA's office about that. Georgia
law states that the governing authority of each county, anybody that receives our funds, they can request to look at their books. The reason we requested an audit is because typically a lot of these type departments, and in the past under Stephen Kelly and Jackie Johnson, they done a yearly audit, just like you just mentioned with Wayne County. Right. We do a yearly audit. I mean, it's that's to be fiscally responsible. Of course, we're mandated to, but even these larger departments that are receiving large amounts of money, it's obviously fiscally responsible to have an audit done every year. When Stephen Kelly was a district attorney, he did it every year. When Jackie Johnson was district attorney, she did it every year. So we kind of assumed he would have an annual audit, and he could just send us the audit. We could look at it and go, okay, we see now where he's bleeding money or whatever's going on.
Right, yeah.
But the problem was, is that he doesn't have an audit. And so our initial request was kind of rebuffed, and then they finally come back and said, okay, we'll let you look at the books. And so we've requested, all of his bank statements for all of the accounts that the district attorney's office oversees for the last 4 years. We haven't received them yet, but they're compiling those, and that will take a little time, obviously.
And another move that the county made, our county commissioners made at their meeting, apparently he gets a supplement from each county.
Yes.
$8,400 is the figure I heard. Is that a monthly figure that you get from the county?
No, that's annual from Wayne County. So just like...
And the commissioners voted to can't do it now, but his new term starts in January. So in January, he won't receive that anymore. That's the motion and a unanimous vote that the commissioners made at a county commissioners meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And it's the county discretion on, one, paying a state supplement and then how much you pay. Wayne County was $8,400. I forget what Appleton's was. I think it totals about. I think all 5 counties total.
Have you heard from the DA since the county commissioners did that? Has there been any reaction on that move by the commissioners from the DA?
No. The last time I talked to him was he called me, and I apologize. I came straight from the house and didn't bring any notes with me, but he called me probably a couple of weeks after we had. I think it was a September 23rd meeting. And on the 24th, I sent him a list of all the motions that the commissioners made that night in reference to that they were going to pay the state supplements for the state attorneys. So he's state paid. We give him a supplement, and then the other 2 state attorneys that were in the Wayne County office, they were state employees, and we also paid them a supplement as well. So we were going to withhold those until we reached an IGA, and then also withhold his supplement until we got the audit. I sent all that stuff to him, and his initial response was, because that was, a lot of this, it was action items that he requested from us from the standpoint, once Glenn County quit being the payroll processor, that means those employees in the Wayne County office, I mean, they literally were without a paycheck because Glenn County wasn't going to pay them anymore.
They wanted Wayne County to pay it.
Right. So
at that meeting, you even tried to help me more. You were making a motion for
a third DA.
Right.
That's exactly right. Because, I mean, look, after working in the office, when I was in the office, I'd worked. Sometimes there was only one ADA there, assistant district attorney. Sometimes there was 2. And so this past May, I think it was, they finally were able to get up to staff on 3 attorneys. And in talking to the attorneys in the office, they talked about, how beneficial that was, that folks wasn't sitting in jail, we were getting people out on bond, and just moving cases faster. So I know the importance of that third attorney. So he asked that we take on the 3 employees that were there, the 2 legal assistants and a victim's advocate, as Wayne County employees. So the commissioners said that they would do that. And then also I had requested them to take on the responsibility as an employee, that third attorney. They tabled that, and in between the tabling and coming back for our next meeting where they were going to make the decision on the third attorney is when I got a phone call from the DA, and we were talking, and that was when he told me that he had pulled all the attorneys out of Wayne County's office and moved them to the Brunswick office.
Right. Like I said, talking to local sheriffs, Mark Bell and Sheriff Mode, we know what the issue with the Sheriff Mode. Like I said, my biggest issue, and it's still in limbo. He dropped 40 cases, criminal cases in Wayne County. A lot of those were sex cases, rape cases, things like that. He threw all those out. Claimed the investigator was a dirty cop and stood in front of the courthouse down in Camden County and said he lied under oath. He lied. They falsified falsified reports, and just made all kinds of criminal accusations. And the question I asked was, then why isn't he charged with any crimes? And we're going to let some committee look into it. Well, I can't get anybody from that committee to call back. I don't even know if there's an investigation, but we've got an employee at the Sheriff's Department who's in limbo. He's still being paid on the payroll, but his hands are tied as far as being an investigator. So, when do you think that'll be resolved? Anytime, that's been months, close to a year.
Yeah,
so that's how that all began.
Yeah, I don't have a clue on that one, Bob. Look, and I'll tell you, as a former law enforcement officer, and I've said this.
I say from day one, I said again, it's got to be one way or the other.
Right.
He's either a dirty cop and he needs to be charged and taken to court, or he's not a dirty cop and those criminal cases should have been prosecuted.
Yeah.
It can't be.
I agree.
It's one or the other.
I agree. When I was in law enforcement,
this committee he talks about, like I said, I don't even know if they exist. I guess they exist, but they don't return any phone calls. I can't get anybody to call me and say, where's that investigation? They say it's still under investigation. Well, that's an easy way to say we're not going to do anything. Because the word is if he charges him, he's got to go to court and prove the accusations. And the word is he can't do it.
Well, and that's what I was going to say was that when I was in law enforcement and all the cops I've ever worked with, we were always big on if there's a dirty cop, he needs to be held accountable. Because my philosophy's always been, look, when fair or unfair, if you don't like it, don't get in the job. But if you're a preacher, teacher, or a cop, you need to be held to a higher standard. And if you don't meet that standard, then you need to be held accountable. And I truly believe that. I
believe that too. He's ruined this guy's reputation,
right.
but it's in limbo. And like I said, he's still employed by our department, and he's still being paid his regular salary, but he's not doing any investigative work.
And I don't have a clue. I'd heard that there was a GBI investigation, but then you would think that if there was, the GBI would have reached out to the sheriff, which, according to the sheriff, he has heard
never
nothing
been contacted,
from him.
Right.
So,
right.
They would either turn it over to the sheriff, or both, really, the sheriff, and talk to the sheriff about it, and then also turn it back over to the DA's office. Of course, in this case, I would think the DA's office would have to recuse themselves, but then it would be turned over to another prosecutor. But it would be somewhere. You would have some evidence of that going on.
So you begin with that, and then, like I said, he starts running out of money, and then he bails on the juvenile court system, which kept everybody and caught everybody off guard. That was a quick decision that the county had to come. Each county had to get together and say, how are we going to fund because that's an important part of the judicial system. That was just, like I said, it's never been done in the circuit.
No, it was.
I don't know if it's been done in any other circuit before. Is any other of any other DA that bailed on the juvenile court system?
No, I've never heard of it. And when I first got word of it, obviously the first thing I did was call our county attorney, and I'm like, hey, can he do this?
Right. That's what was shocking. Apparently, during state law, he can.
And so that's what Andy said. Andy said, well, he has a constitutional duty to fulfill the court mandates for Superior Court, but he doesn't necessarily have one for juvenile. So, but once again, we were kind of, the fact that he'd done it was unfortunate, but then it was fortunate for Wayne County because we had an attorney who used to be in the DA's office and understands how that juvenile prosecution works. So we were able to kind of quickly put a Band-Aid on it to get this thing worked out. Now, the ideal situation would be that he take that juvenile prosecution back over, because that's where it should be. It should be at the DA's office.
Right. And like I said, you mentioned you worked at the DA's office. The fact that he's moved all the assistant DAs to the Brunswick office, again, that's unheard of and unprecedented. I mean, from dating all the way back to Glenn Thomas Jr., to Stephen Kelly, to whatever. We've always had assistant DAs at the office that the county helps provide the funding for as well, right? How's it work there? Does the county, you pay the light bill, you pay the rent?
Indirectly, because
everybody knows where the building is
costs,
directly across from the courthouse. That building sits there, it says DA's office. So who pays for that building?
Well, it's our building. It's the county's building. And we pay for the maintenance on it. Now, the operational cost, that was part of his budget. We would send that down to his office, and then he would pay the light bill, water bill, whatever, internet, telephones, all that type of stuff. So out of the 5 counties, there's an office, a DA's office in 4 of the counties. Jeff Davis is smaller, and so typically the Appleton office will handle Appleton and Jeff Davis. But I'd never heard of this before. And I mean, look, it's one of those issues that I'm actively looking at, because now I have this huge building with probably 9 office spaces, a conference room, a huge law library, all these files, and I've just got 3 people in it.
Right.
So, I mean, at some point it's going to get, we're going to have to look at possibly, if he's not going to do something different, we're going to have to shut that office down and just take those employees and try to find somewhere else to put them.
Well, the frustration seems to be mounting, just watching our commissioners the last couple meetings. It looks like our commissioners' patience is wearing thin, and so that's why they're talking about possibly creating a new circuit and maybe possibly moving out altogether. So
our first fix is obviously getting this worked out with the district attorney and finding, I think one of the things that we really like is just a different avenue of funding his office. Because, if you think I think one of the things that just really kind of flummoxed a lot of people was, once again, going back to, how do you get in debt $1 million? Because if you try to think about it, like, look at our sheriff's department. The sheriff is a constitutionally elected position, but he gets his funds from the governing authority, which is the county commissioners. So he comes every year with a budget and says, here's what I need. I need, this much money for overtime, this much money for vehicles, this much money for uniforms, ammunition, guns, everything he needs is in his budget. If he needs more the next year, then he comes before the commissioners and says, hey, I need more, and here's why I need more. That type of funding mechanism, there's no way for him to get in debt to him, because he's requesting the money from them. The way it's been done with the DA's office is different. So we reached out, I know, to the Waycross circuit, and they do it just like that model, where the DA, a lot like the sheriff, and Sheriff Mosley, don't get mad at me for this, but almost like a department head, you could think about it like that where they're not actually sitting there bringing money in and writing checks out. That they're getting invoices and then sending them to the county office, and we pay all their invoices for them, because that's where his budgetary money is coming from. So ideally, we would like to go back. I know, at least I know Wayne County would. And when we met with Camden and Glenn the other night, Tuesday a week ago, or last Tuesday rather, they seem to be on board and like that funding mechanism a lot better as well. And once again, that's probably about 75% of the circuits in the state of Georgia use that type of funding mechanism, to where. And look, I think it's easier for the district attorney as well. I mean, it takes a burden off their office, to where he knows what his budget is. Here's what I got to work with. If I need another ADA in a certain office, I just go back to the commissioners and say, look, here's what the need is. Look at my caseload. I've got to have somebody else. I need you to fund that position. That position's funded. He has the person.
Well, obviously the governor mentioned that there's other DAs around the state that aren't doing what they feel should be done, so they're setting up this oversight committee. And I'll just make this prediction: when it does begin in January, they're going to get bombarded with letters from people from Lane County on what's going on here in the Brunswick Judicial Circuit. But I want to end on a positive note. Don't want to get into zoning because that's something we need a whole show for that. But I'll
come back for that.
Yeah, but I'll end on the good note. Last night, as everybody knows, pickleball has become one of the biggest sports, and it's there's a lot of people playing it. You see that the city's courts have been used, but the county last night is moving forward to build 4 pickleball courts. First of all, where will they be located at? Do you know where they're located?
Yes, I know exactly where they'll be located at. It's just a matter of trying to explain it. So the way I explain it is this: if you're going into Bill Morris, now don't think about Ben Park and the other the smaller fields. But you're going into Bill Morris, the large adult field on the left, that's always, for years been adult softball and stuff. Well, here, I don't know if it was the spring or beginning of the summer, Spec had some folks come in and they moved that fence in so adults can still be on it, I think. But the bigger issue is now it's another field for his rec kids to play on, because I'm telling you, and I think he's coming in tomorrow, right? His numbers.
Right. They're hosting again the district soccer, so that's it starts next week. A lot of people be in town for that. It's great. Yeah,
his numbers are just off the chain on how many kids he runs through the rec program. I mean, we have one of the smallest 17 in our district, 17U populations, but yet we field more teams every year than any other county in our district. I mean, it's amazing the amount of kids that we've got.
You spoke at the state of Wayne. You mentioned how many district and state championships that we've got.
Over the last 5 years, Wayne County's won more state and district championships than any other county in our district. So, but getting back to yours, so that adult softball field, he moved that area in. And so then when he and I were sitting down talking one day, and he was like, look, this pickleball thing's going crazy. He said people's wanting us to put pickleball courts in.
It's amazing.
Because the Jesup one was staying packed.
Yeah.
And so it really worked out great, because that area where the fence was moved in is still under the lights, and is plenty enough room to put 4 pickleball courts there. So the commissioners okayed the bid process on the concrete.
Right, now they have to decide who's going to come and paint and things like that.
Exactly.
Because as Spec said, they want to do it right the first time. They don't have to come in overdo it. So they're being very cautious to make sure they get the right company to come in and do it the right way. So I thought that was a smart move last night to just table that and do some more research on that. But they did approve the concrete for the courts.
No, you're absolutely right. Because I'm going to tell you something. I think sometimes, I know this is true for myself. In Wayne County, I go by when my kids were coming up playing rec ball, I go out to those ball fields and I ride by them just about every single day if I'm not out there having to see Spec about something or just whatever. And I look at those fields and I get accustomed to them. But then when I go to these ACCG meetings in Savannah and stuff, and I talk to folks like, with Spec not being there, just me and Steve Card talking, and I hear someone like Steve Card tell me, Paul, you don't understand. Wayne County has showcase fields. You go to any other county, and like larger counties, they'll come and just marvel at how nice our fields are. So in the tradition of those fields being just as nice, there's no doubt in my mind Specs wanting to make sure we got the right pickleball court. We know nothing about it. So.
Like they mentioned last night, it's the fastest growing sport in America, and more people are doing it. So, like I said, you go by the city courts, and there's people there even waiting to get in line to get on the court. So the county's moving forward with those 4 courts. So, again, should be a great addition to the county. But, Paul, always good to see you. I appreciate you coming in. Like I said, we'll continue to follow that story, but it seems like it's gaining momentum. I think Applin and Jeff Davis would like to see the same thing maybe bring Long in or whatever. But like I said, got to get the state people on board as well. But our commissioners seem like, it's more than just talk. It's, they look like they want to see some action down the road.
No, I think so. Even if we work, and we're going to work this thing out with the district attorney. I'm positive about that. But even with that, I think it's something that we still need to pursue just for the future.
Okay. Appreciate you coming in. And that's going to do it for today's World Famous Butch and Bob Show.
The World Famous Butch and Bob Show has been brought to you by Murphy's Builder Supply, O.C. Welch, First Southern Bank, and the service department at GNS Auto Sales.